Perfect. Okay. Well, an official welcome to everyone. Happy Tuesday. Thank you for joining. This is MESA's monthly webinar, which we host on topics related to agroecology and food systems, typically every third Tuesday of each month. This month is the fourth Tuesday, so we do have some flexibility with that. But our intention with that consistency of dates is to hopefully make it easier or more predictable for you to join in the future. So that's subject to change, but for now they're every third Tuesday. Okay, well, thank you everyone. There are more introductions in the chat if you'd like to take a look and see. But for now, we're going to get started with our presentation. And before we jump into that, I'd like to just review a few logistics. We will be together in this space for just about an hour more at this point until 11:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we will, in just a minute, I will be introducing and then handing things over to our guest presenter, who will give a presentation, and then afterwards we'll have the chance to ask her questions and have a conversation. So we're really hoping as the speaker is presenting that you're thinking about how this information applies to your own farming or food systems practice at the moment, or aligns with your goals. And then make sure to bring those questions. You're welcome to the Q&A, the question and answer session. You can either post them in the chat during the presentation or just save them until the end to ask. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our guest speaker for today. Hillery Goodgame is a deeply knowledgeable and well-connected farmer with over 3 years of experience stewarding Blue Heron urban farms and sanctuary in southern Georgia. Hillery holds a Bachelor of Science in Industrial and Labor Relations with a minor in economics from Cornell University and an MBA from the J.L. Kellogg Graduate School of Management of Northwestern University. She also has a master's certification in health information technology from Colorado University. And she has more than 20 years of experience as a project manager in the manufacturing, healthcare, financial services, banking, and aerospace sectors. Most things agriculture, conservation, and farming are now her avocation and passion. She's very interested in the thought that health is food and food is health, that the land nourishes, empowers, and heals. She is simultaneously excited, exhilarated, and empowered by this farming and conservation land stewardship journey. She looks forward to the day when she continues an unbroken path of learning, sharing, and mutual support to those who follow. So with that, I would love to hand it over to you, Hillery.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend. So I'm honored to be here. So I am actually a member of cohort 7, which is, I understand, the last cohort. And so I completed the introductory course in the fall of 2022. And then during the spring, a few weeks ago, we completed the advanced course. And so to give you, I have a list of some things I'd like to speak to you about, but mainly my overarching theme is regenerative agriculture. So just to give you a little bit of information about my journey. So I am from New York City. I am the first generation of immigrants. My parents are from the Caribbean, and I am the first generation actually born here stateside. And as Sabrina shared, I wound up going to Cornell and then Northwestern, and I've worked in many different sectors for the last probably 10, 12 years. I've worked in healthcare as a project manager, as an IT person. And literally when the last 2 years occurred, in New York as ground zero, working for the largest public hospital in the United States, and New York went on shutdown. And so I was literally on lockdown for about 4 months. And it was very, very interesting. And I just really felt, I grew up in New York working with my mother and my father, who came from the Caribbean and had farms there. And so we had the local community garden, literally in the projects in Harlem. And during the spring and the summer and going into the fall, I would work with them in the garden. So for some reason, and then during the summer, I would spend the summers in the Poconos, kind of harvesting berries and strawberries and different camps that my parents would send me to. And so for some reason, during sort of New York being closed down, I got this notion that I wanted to purchase a farm. And so literally I purchased 12 acres, just 15 minutes south of the Atlanta airport. And my property is a bit unusual in that it is a USDA designated farm, but it also is a conservancy, which means that I have protected animals. I have the great Georgia blue herring. I have crane. I have all types of snakes and frogs. I have a very vibrant wildlife out here. I also have deer. And I also have a pond that has 5 different kinds of fish, but I also have forestry. So believe it or not, all of that exists 15 minutes south of the Atlanta airport. So I actually have a comprehensive wildlife plan, land plan, which is agriculture, as well as my fish. So I'm very excited. In fact, today I was sharing with Sabrina and I showed you, Sabrina, could you bring up the list real quickly of what I have being planted out here? So literally the Atlanta Braves, I donated parts of my property to have trees planted on my property. So the Atlanta Braves have donated about 84 trees for my property. Again, it's 12 acres and I requested specifically native plants. So I have native plants, I have pecans, I have apples. This is, if you guys can see that, what the list looks like. I literally have a crew of people on my property now planting these trees. And what's interesting is some of the trees that do not need shade are literally being planted in my forest. Again, so a living example of agroforestry is going on right now. You can take that down, thank you. So I have some native plants in deference to the original peoples, which were the Creek and the Muskogee of this area. I chose some native plants, but then I also chose things like muscadine. Outside of what you see there in terms of the trees, I grow medicinal herbs. I grow turmeric, I grow ginger, I grow lettuce. I also grow vertically, and I also grow hydroponically, which means that I grow inside and I grow outside. And then I also donate my land for nonprofits. Like I've had a group of young men out here, young boys between the ages of 8 and 12 with their parents learning how to fish. So that's been really good. And then afterwards I host them and, maybe we have like a picnic for them. So I just really want to, talk to you. That's pretty much my background journey. I literally bought my property sight unseen. I was in New York, locked down, and called my daughter, found a broker and said, I want a minimum of 10 acres of property. And so I literally did not even step foot on my property until 2 days before I closed. And it is just absolutely, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. So part of my journey has been about education. I don't know whether Sabrina sent out some of my background. When I say education, I mean farming education. And I would encourage anyone to embark on that journey of farming and educating yourself in the practices that interest you, and maybe you educate yourself in some practices that may not interest you. So I'm also certified as a cattle person, even though I have no intention of doing cattle. I'm about to do the small rudiments, which are goats and sheep. I'm about to do that certification. I've just completed the certification in composting. So I literally have a bin of worms that I am learning to grow and feed in my living room, which is interesting. They try to get out as the invertebrates that they are. So there are many definitions of farming, and I would encourage you to find your particular niche. I think a lot of people think that you have to have a lot of space to farm. And if you're in the United States, a farm is considered 1/10 of an acre, which a lot of people do not know. So if you know that a farm is 1/10 of an acre, then that really opens up the possibilities. That may be your backyard, that may be your auntie's or your cousin's backyard. That may, you may run into some problems if you're in a development and you have a HOA, a housing organization, you may have restrictions and covenants. But really, a lot of people, when they go on the journey to own land and to start a farm, they think that they have to have a minimum of 5 acres. That's what I was told in the beginning, even though I already had 12 acres. And you can also lease. So that's something to think about. You also have that option of leasing land. And I would encourage anyone, particularly if you are an urban farmer, there are so many programs out there that I have utilized, whether it's the USDA or NRCS, which is Natural Resource and Conservation. So through that program, I have applied for a high tunnel. A high tunnel, sort of like a hoop house with plastic over it. So that will allow me to grow 365 days a year. I do have a well already on my property, but I will be getting another well. Because I do have a meadow that is a bit far away from the original well. So if I can just kind of jump into some of the practices and run down some of the practices that I do use on my farm. So as I say, I do use agroforestry, as evidenced in part by the fact that we're planting literally nut trees underneath the canopy today in the forest, which is exciting. Oh, let me back up and say that that project that I applied for is called the Orchard Project. And what will happen is I have donated my land. The Atlanta Braves has donated 84 trees to me, and the harvest from those trees will be donated to food banks and other food hubs in Atlanta that address areas of food insecurity and lack of access to nutritionally dense food. So essentially what I have done is I have donated my land so that others can have access to food. And I just think that that's kind of, that's very much in line with the whole permaculture notion that we care about people, that we're stewards of people and we're stewards of the land, and we try to minimize waste. And so I think that's all part of the cycle of being a good steward of the land that I've been given to me. And so that's important to me. The other thing that I do is when I do plant, I try to, and I don't always have the opportunity to do this, but I do try to buy seeds from BIPOC farmers, from, people of color. If they have a seed company, I do try to support their efforts. I also I only employ organic. I have not had the need so far to use foreign or chemical fertilizers. I have a manure pile here. I have plenty of trees. I have worms out there. I use my leaves. I do compost also. I just received certification in composting. So I only use natural compost and dirt. What else? I also do landscaping using native trees. I have persimmon trees. I have a whole collection of edible landscaping here. I also use no-till. We do not till the soil here. And I make sure that we test at least 3 times a year. That's arbitrary for me. But I also do cover cropping. So in between my row cropping, I may cover with plastic, so to keep the weeds down, and therefore I don't have to kind of be fighting the weeds and the chemicals. But then also by my choice of what I choose to plant, for instance, turmeric grows underneath the ground. And so I don't have the problem so much as with funguses. Of course, if I have welling of water, I would have fungus, but I also plant sort of on a tier basis so that things run off. I also, my pond is about 1.5 acres, and I have 5 different kinds of fish. But around the pond, what was not being employed before was the use of buffer strips. So I also have natural plants as buffers around my pond. And that also provides a habitat for the frogs, and the fireflies are out there, the dragonflies are out there. I also have swallow homes, I'll call them. So swallow hotels, and which is part of the whole notion again of permaculture, because the swallows eat the mosquitoes. So even though I literally have a body of water outside of my front door, I have very few mosquitoes out here because the swallows take care of that particular issue. What else do I have? I also have greenhouses. So I also do grow inside. I grow in vertical towers, And that I'm able to do probably for about maybe 7 months before we have frost here in Georgia. I also am certified in longleaf pine. So Georgia is, it has like a line that sort of comes from prehistoric time when the glaciers were here. So in the south of Georgia and in the part of Georgia that I'm in, we have more so sandy type of a soil, and that is very conducive to growing longleaf pine. And so I am certified in longleaf pine. I'm growing more longleaf pine and putting more in. So I think that's a good overview. I also have wildlife here, as I say. I have deer, and I do have the blue heron, which is a protected animal, all kinds of snakes. So that has pretty much been my journey. I would say to you, find whatever your particular niche is. I do a lot. And then I'm also the head of one of the chapters of Women in Agriculture, which is an international group. So I am the founder and leader of the South Bolton Group, which is my area right south of the airport. So there are many avenues of expression in how we steward the land and how we care for others. And I would say, really just kind of find your passion. There are many, many, many choices here. As I started this journey, and I shared with Sabrina when I got the call about MESA, I was literally in Portugal visiting farms, and I wanted to see aqueduct structures that literally came from the Roman times. And I was there for a week, and I was literally touring Portugal, visiting farms. And then I got the call from MESA, and for whatever reason I picked up, and they said, okay, you're in cohort number 7. And I was absolutely delighted. So I really want to leave time for, for whatever questions you may have. That's kind of an overview of what I'm doing. I am looking at my second farm right now. And that one will probably be, or it will be, let me back up. So 2 of my children are actually following me into farming, which I'm excited about. I have one daughter who did her undergraduate at Columbia, and then she went on and she did a master's in construction management. And so she is bringing those skills into farming. So for the agritourism piece of what I will do, she will actually design and build out what will be a wedding venue. So farming is not just animals and livestock, but it's also worm. You can be a worm farmer, you can be a cut flower farmer, you can be a medicinal herb farmer, you can have a farm that you turn into agritourism. So for me, my next farm will be centered on a wedding venue, an outdoor wedding venue. And also I'm very interested in providing space for people who have physical challenges. So maybe people who are in wheelchairs, and on that farm, I'd like to have raised beds because that does have enough access on that property for people to come in on buses. And I'd like them to be able to commune with the earth and experience farming where they may not ordinarily be able to, because it does not, they may not have access because of however the ground is laid out. And then the other thing on that farm I'm planning to do is for people who have physical challenges to do glamping, which is sort of like, I don't know, fancy camping. So I will put a couple of maybe not so tiny houses there, but that they have access, that they have wheelchair access, and it meets their needs. So that's it. Any questions?
Thanks, Hillary.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, Letitia.
How did you learn about hydroponics and aeroponics? What made you get into it? How was that learning journey? And how do you like the results compared to growing straight out of the soil?
So in terms of particularly hydroponics, one moment, I need to just send a message. I need to just tell someone I'm in a meeting presenting. Someone was dinging me to come into another meeting. I do apologize. So in terms of hydroponics, you can grow literally almost 5 times, if not more, in a smaller space than you can if you were doing land growing the traditional way. Also, it's very friendly in terms of the carbon footprint. There's less of a carbon footprint. There's less disturbance to the land, and there's also less water usage. Okay, so that was something I'm very much committed to. What now the federal government here in America is calling climate smart growing, meaning that you are leaving less of a carbon footprint. So the results on that are fantastic because number one, I'm growing indoors and I'm able to grow a larger percentage of days of the year than I would be able to otherwise. So in terms of my journey there, there's something called freight farming where they take literally freight containers and they grow with lights and you can literally monitor it on your phone to know what are the nutrients that the plants are getting. And so literally every 30 days you have a harvest of however many plants you do. So in terms of a year, you literally can do literally hundreds of thousands of plants. So it's the roots inside little plugs, and it uses a drip irrigation system. So in terms of the results, there are many positives, as I said, less use of water, higher yield. Because you're inside, you're less susceptible to bugs and to these diseases and funguses. There are some things that we have to deal with, but not so much the same things that we have to deal with when we're growing outside, if that makes sense. In terms of aquaponics, the aquaponics is literally using the water and the waste from the fish to feed your plants. And so I also do some of that. I would like to expand on that. So does that answer your question in terms of what the journey has been like? It's been a lot about self-education. It's been a lot about finding companies who do freight farming, meaning that we call it freight farming, but it really is hydroponics growing indoors. There are places, now I would say, if you're interested, a lot of that technology came out of the Netherlands. I think one of the speakers in my cohort, the doctor who lives in Canada, who has a farm in Nigeria, he talked about the fact that he actually went someplace, I believe in South America or the Netherlands, in order to get trained in it. So there's much information out there. I think it's a way to go. And I think that you can do both. But again, some people like to be in the earth and have their hands in the earth. I'd like to try both approaches, but I think long-term, I'm probably going to be going towards hydroponics and aquaponics.
Thank you so much. You definitely answered all of my questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I see one in the chat here, or a few in the chat actually. One from Khaled, that is, can I grow pecan nuts in tropical weather?
Can you grow pine nuts? What kind of nuts?
Pecan.
I don't know. That's interesting. I do not know. Where are you located? Where are you located?
In Bangladesh.
So that's interesting. I do not know whether you can grow pecans. Pecans are a very profitable product here in the States. Now, I would say there is something called, let me think, cola nuts. Is it cola nuts? Let me just think. Oh, tiger nuts, Tiger. It's also called horchata, Horchata. I'm going to be experimenting with growing that. So that is grown in Africa, mainly in Niger. It's also exported to Spain as a drink and as a milk. And also as a powder for flour. So I'm going to be experimenting with that to see whether I can grow that here in the United States. I'm part of a women's group, and we have imported some some horchata or some what's called tiger nuts to the US, and we're going to see whether we can grow them here. So even though it's called a nut, it's really a grass. So I know that seems like a slight kind of diversion from what you're asking. You're asking about pecans. I don't know. You would have to take a look at that, whether that grows in your zone or not. But I am experimenting with growing things here that are grown in other countries.
Okay, but I know that pecan nuts grown in desert places in South Africa.
Oh, interesting. Okay, interesting.
I know a few growers there. They have a commercial plantation in South Africa.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Okay.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Katya has a few questions here in the chat. One is going back to the hydroponics topic. What would you suggest for a beginner in hydroponics?
So, there are now that's interesting. It depends on how small you'd like to start. I mean, literally, where are you located?
Peru.
Oh, okay. So literally, even in, literally here commercially, there are literally small hydroponic units that you can put on your desk. There are towers that have several different layers that may have 5 towers that maybe they're about 6 foot tall, that has little holes, and the water circulates with the nutrients, and you manage the nutrient content by taking the pH of the water. So something like that, you literally can have in your house. People have hydroponics in their basement. So it's not something that has to be large scale to start. I would find the smallest scale that is manageable and reasonable and economical for you and choose to start there. All right. There are hydroponic units. Some of them are so small that they sit on your desk, but I would certainly say read and educate yourself. So there are hydroponic units that you can just feed your family, salads and other greens and produce if that's what you'd like to grow. Or you could feed several families, or you can have, I have a friend who has 6 different units, and she puts together produce boxes and sells to her local church in order to make sure that elderly people or older people in her church have access to nutrient-dense foods. So there are many ways to start, but I would just start with the internet search. And then YouTube University is wonderful, right? Just go to YouTube and put in hydroponics or aquaponics, whichever one you're interested in, and that is a wonderful place to start.
Great, thank you. I'm curious too what you found, Hillary, or encountered with the accessibility of like equipment that is associated with hydroponics, and how if equipment is expensive, or if there's funding opportunities for different hydroponic projects, so any financial support that you found in terms of implementing these hydroponics, because I foresee that and have heard from others that that is a barrier when trying to get into this way of farming.
Yeah, so I would say if you can find others in your city who are doing it, and if you can connect with them. So for instance, here in Georgia, we have something called 81 Acres, which is a large international hydroponic company, but it really is based here in the United States. They're putting in a huge multi-acre facility here in Atlanta. But I would say in terms of getting started, if you're here in the US, I don't know what happens in other countries, but if you're here in the United States, there are many grants and opportunities for you to apply for. So, there's some grants that are $5,000, some grants that are $10,000. There are even grants that are $50,000. So there you have to really know what you're talking about in terms of having your narrative together in terms of putting forth your test case or your case study as to why you want to do this. So in that situation, you're talking about the narrative of using less water, being carbon friendly, having a less carbon footprint, a reduced carbon footprint, what your output is going to be. Are you going to partner with your Young Farmers Association? I find in applying for some of these grants, partnering with organizations where you have an opportunity to teach and reach others is kind of an important part of some of these grants. So for me, I always try to bring in my young farmers or my Future Farmers Association or my 4-H from my local high school or my local district. For instance, with my buffers, with the planning of my buffer zones, I have young people who have come in and they plant the buffer zones on my pond, but I also work with them to plant pollinator zones. So meaning that I plant pollinator strips to bring in pollinators, so whether it's bees or, I may plant wildflowers that attract hummingbirds. So I think partnership is important, and it is not, some of these things are hiding in plain sight, I'll say that. So I think, you begin to find out what your best search words are, such as grants for hydroponics, or I would suggest grants for innovative ways of farming. That's a big one. How do you find innovative ways of farming? And all types of grants are going to come up for you, whether you're using permaculture or whether you're using vertical farming. It's really a matter of finding what the keywords are to search for what you want.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's definitely helpful in just knowing the terms to start your search. And let's see. I think there was another question in the chat from Katya. Let's see. Oh yes. How would you suggest, or what would you suggest to a starter urban farmer with sick plants? Example, with whitefly.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I would say this, what approaches have you taken now to dealing with that? Can the person respond? What approach have you taken so far to deal with that?
Katya, you're welcome to. Oh yeah, okay. So she says currently just has them on pots.
Okay, no problem. So I'll just tell you some of the things that I've done. I've done things like peppermint oil. I've done things like mint oil. Putting that on the leaves. I use diatomaceous earth, which is natural. So I don't know whether that would be a specific answer to the whiteflies, but those are some of the things that I have done. Now, in some cases, like last year, some of the crops I had, like tomato and corn, were totally decimated almost overnight, which is another reason why I've moved more to the hydroponics and growing inside, because, it seemed like it was a never-ending battle to deal with pests and infestations, and then we would have a lot of rain, and then we'd have issues of fungus. Those are not issues that I face being on the inside, if that makes sense. So, that's the best I could tell you. If you're committed to managing pests naturally and organically, there's tons of information out there regarding that. Also some people, and I don't know whether that's specific to the whiteflies, but some people in between their crops, they plant marigold or they plant other flowers that repel pests. And certain types of insects. So that might be something to consider. What do you plant in between your biodiversity in your planting in order to address some of those issues?
Great, thank you. Katya says thanks.
Thank you.
Let's see. So as I just put in the chat, you're welcome to, if you don't want to unmute, to put your questions here in the chat and I can read them out, or you're welcome to unmute if anything has come up for you as we've been talking. You can give it a minute or so. Yeah.
So I was
Joseph.
hoping if I could, okay, so sorry for stealing the limelight quickly. So hi, Miss Hillary. Hoping you're good again.
All is well.
So my name is Joseph. I am from Kenya.
Mhm.
And honestly, first of all, congratulations. It seems you're having a hive of activities that isn't easy to manage, and whichever team you're having, pass my regards and my congratulatory message to them.
Thank
So
you
I
so
have
much.
three questions. So I have three questions from the top of my head. First off, you mentioned you have worms or worms. At some point, I don't know if this is an idea you've had pitched to your end or something, but have you ever thought of vermiculture as, you know, a method for how to kind of manage or use the current worms that you have? Because you
Oh,
mentioned you're doing
absolutely.
a bit of organics, compost. So yeah, that's one question. So if it is so, how is the progress? And so far, how are you viewing the whole vermiculture, and how would you kind of, yeah, let's just start there. Let's just start there.
Thank you. So I actually did something. We have something here towards from our extension, our university extension is a system of agricultural education. And I actually just completed the master composter course. And as part of that, I actually had to build bin homes for my worms. And so here in Georgia, the primary type of worm is red wigglers. So I literally have them in bins in my living room downstairs. And I'm feeding them and learning how to harvest the castings. And also in the backyard, I do have a compost pile where I do put mostly fruits and vegetables, and I have it contained so that it doesn't draw kind of wild animals. So that's why I say there are many ways to be a farmer, and one of the ways to be a farmer is to be a vermer person, in terms of vermiculture and composting. I have someone who does nothing but sells worms. So I would like to get to the point where I would also be selling worms to fishermen and other people who want worms, as well as having them in the compost so that I can sell the compost, if that makes sense. So the answer to your question is yes. Very much into worms of late. And it's interesting. I know people who do nothing but sell rabbits, there are people who have farms and they offer riding lessons, but yet, they plant clover or they plant turmeric on 4 acres of their farm. So again, there are many ways for us to reimagine what does it mean to be farming, and certainly vermiculture is one of those ways.
Hey, okay. So like I mentioned, I have three questions. I'll go straight to it. The second one would be, okay, so you've mentioned hydroponics as an alternative, method of farming, which I totally understand. So part one of the question would be, have you given up on the earth, like putting your hands in the dirt kind of farming? And if so, part B of the question, what do you think of IPM in regards to, hands in the dirt farming? Have you tried
Yeah.
it? Has it given you any success? If so, was that also like, a nudge to the hydroponic edge?
No, so I still grow in the dirt. So we still grow cabbage, we grow collards, we grow carrots, we grow sweet potatoes here. What else do we grow in the dirt? We also grow flowers. So for me, no, I never want to get away from the notion as farming as having my hands in the dirt. To me, the dirt is very therapeutic and very necessary, and everyone doesn't have the resources. One thing we can always find, hopefully, as more and more people gain access, we can find seeds and we can find dirt, right? Everyone doesn't have access to, and I think Sabrina mentioned this, as to what are some of the barriers to growing hydroponically, and certainly finances can be one of them, but we can always find seeds, hopefully, and we can find dirt, right? Particularly when we begin to talk about growing indigenous foods and being respectful of native foods and indigenous foods, everything does not necessarily grow well hydroponically, right? So, you know, there are some things that grow better hydroponically than others, such as herbs, such as lettuce, but then there are certain things that don't grow fantastically hydroponically, right? Like some of the berries don't necessarily grow particularly great hydroponically, depending on what you want to grow, right? And then you can be susceptible because it is stationary and you don't want to have, you know, when you think about hydroponically, you're not just necessarily growing one type of fruit or vegetable or produce in one unit. Sometimes, many times we're mixing these things up. So something that may be a great nutrient for, I don't know, for cabbage may not be the great nutrient mix for strawberries, right? So to some extent, it can also be non-feasible on a small scale, right? So will I ever get away from growing in the dirt? Absolutely not. You know, that is my home. And I feel that that's part of my responsibility for myself and for others to teach them to be caregivers of the earth and caretakers of the earth.
Okay. Again, I really am enjoying so far. Again, let me just go straight to the third and final question. So far in regards to, let's say, if you do have excessive, harvest, which that's kind of normal in regards to what you have planted, and you say you have or grow or you produce in terms of tiers. So at some point, let's say you have excess. Currently, do you have like a canning procedure or like a cottage industry, process where you can can foods, do like cheese making, dry vegetables, that kind of an idea? So if so, again, how has the process been? And if in the sense you are doing that, would you also, spread the message or the good gospel of, canning, recycling, that kind of vibe?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's one of the principles of permaculture, right? Is how do we reduce waste? So how do I reduce waste? I am just about to take a class in canning. And I have taken a class regarding a solar dryer for fruits and vegetables. So I'm very much interested at some point pursuing that, where in order to preserve fruits and vegetables, that they would be dried, but using a solar dryer. So I did take some level of instruction at one of the historically Black colleges here, Fort Valley State, and they are experimenting with that and looking at that. The other thing, in order to promote sharing and to promote access for others to fresh fruits and vegetables. I do have an organization here in Atlanta that practices the principle of gleaning, meaning that things that are left in the field or things that are excess, they come and they take it and they donate it to food banks. And then even when I have excess, I donate to food banks and I also donate to my neighbors. So I try to make sure that I minimize waste by literally sharing with others or canning and preserving. Sometimes I will give things to people, fruits and vegetables, cabbage, pickles, or cucumbers, and let them do the canning. And so they get to keep what they want to keep, but they may give me just a minimal portion of it. There are about so many pickles you can eat, right? So, unless you absolutely have a love of pickles. And then I also have another group who specializes in kimchi, right? A group of Korean farmers, and they love kimchi. And they take my cabbage and they make kimchi, everything from very hot to mild. And again, it's a matter of sharing and having a sense of community in terms of what you're doing in terms of your farming.
Okay. Well, thank you. I really appreciate the feedback and, you having the opportunity to answer them. And I can't wait to hear what we have next. So
thank you so much. Thank you. I'm honored. Thank you so very much.
All right, thank you. I haven't seen any more questions come into the chat, so I'm wondering, Hillary, if this would be a good time for us to share the photos that you
Yeah, that would be great. So I did share some
Okay.
photos of my farm. If you want to bring them up, if you can bring up the blue herring first, I think that may be the first one that was shared. So maybe that's at the bottom of the pile. I'm not quite sure.
Yes, let's see. I just have them here in the email so I can pull it up larger, but
So yes, so this is my blue herring. This is a great Georgia blue herring. They also do come in other colors. So this is my Georgia blue herring actually at the side of my pond. So he comes by pretty much every day and eats the fish. And so I have a male and a female, and then this year they had little baby herrings. And so sometimes I look out of my window and I call him one of my spirit animals, and he's just out there, just, I guess, just relaxing. So this is a picture taken on the side of my pond. Yeah, if you want to pull up another one.
sure. Yeah, maybe I'd love for you to share your the crest as well at some point, so I know that
Okay,
there's
I will.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, so again, this is my pond. This is what's in front of my house. So literally going all the way around to the right to the top. So the top left, that's the road, but all of that is part of my property. So that is also part of the area where today they're out there planting fruit trees. Thank you.
Wonderful. And where has there been the like riparian restoration area or the buffer
Yes.
zone?
So yes, exactly. So this is before I started putting in the buffer zones. So literally all along here in the front, going around to the right, those trees that look like they're sitting in the water are cypress trees. And then as you go around to what looks like the top, where there are some trees there that are maybe a little darker, over there, I actually also have beavers, and there's a dam over there. So the beavers literally, you know, sort of like, looks like a water slide in the winter. They literally slide down the side of the bank and you can hear them hit the water. They're quite large and they eat the fish also. So along from the bottom here of this picture, all the way going around to the right to the other side of that bank over there, there are buffers that have been put there. The other thing is in the back of the property, you won't see it here. You'll see it in another picture. Do you want to try another picture?
Sure.
So in the back of the property there, behind this large tree in the middle, it looks a little light on the ground. That is because I scrape there in the winter, and I actually plant ryegrass for my deer. And I also put out salt licks for them so that they can get nutrients during the winter. And I also put out deer corn so that they can essentially eat. You have another one? And then this is interesting. Someone asked about canning. So this shed here, in the ceiling, there are actually kind of rows where you can literally put jars and you can screw them into the ceiling. So the people who originally had the property, this is where they would can and where they would also dress their deer. And then what you see in the front here is my first well. So this well goes, I sit on a freshwater aquifer. So this well goes 250 feet down to the aquifer.
Wow.
I think that may be it. Oh,
Last
okay.
one.
So this is just another view. Here in the middle, it's like a little tree that you can see right down the middle, not the bigger trees. Those are magnolias, but those are some of the peach trees. I planted a row of peach trees last year. And so the first 1-2 years, we don't expect them to bear fruit. In fact, we try to discourage them from bearing fruit because the bearing of the fruit up top draws away from the nutrients at the root of the tree, and the tree having the ability to take really a good stronghold. So, and that area again is part of the area where they're out there planting right now as we speak.
Great. And do you know what is going in this area exactly?
Oh yeah, so in that area, because that needs sun,
Yeah.
that is going to be the pawpaws, the apricots, figs, what else that needs sun? The apples, the pears. I already have pears, I already have apples bearing fruit on the property that were planted before I came, and now I just am the steward of them. But that's an area that needs sun, as opposed to, there's another part of the property that I don't have a picture of here, where literally in the canopy in the forest, as a demonstration of agroforestry, we're planting other types of trees and nuts, like the walnuts, that do not need as much sun. So literally, like it's in that picture, they're out there planting literally in the forest.
Wow. I'm curious, a question that's coming to mind right now is how, I'm sure it varies based on the type of tree, but in terms of spacing, like planting an orchard,
Yes.
allowing space for roots to mature and grow to their fullest, you know, their needed area. What is that, I guess, maybe is there a standard for that, or
Yes.
in terms of spacing? Yeah.
Yeah, in general, it's about 30 square feet. So they do
Okay.
need spacing in order to have sun and in order to have the roots mature. So it's about 30 square feet. So that's why, I have a nice piece of land here. And so I do have room for quite a few trees. Now, when it comes to the pecans, the way the pecans are harvested is there's literally a machine that goes down the row. So the pecans have to be about 50 feet away from each other. And so for the pecans, and they also need a lot of sun. So for the pecans, I have those planted in my meadow. So the meadow is just a big, huge sunny area. I did not provide pictures here, but that's where the pecans are.
Okay. Okay, I will stop sharing now.
Thank
Yeah, thank you for providing those photos. And give everyone just a minute more or so to post any last questions they have in the chat. If not, we can close out a little bit early, and give Hillary a few minutes for any closing remarks. Let's see. I did get one request actually from Marie Chris here, who is going to be hopefully joining our SAGE program, and also works on various social media projects for MESA, is a really talented graphic design artist. And so she's asking if we can maybe take a photo of us all being in this virtual space together. I know that a few people have already left, but if that's something y'all would be willing to do, yeah, just turning on your cameras. If you're not comfortable with that, no problem. You can leave your camera off. Wonderful. I'll give everyone thanks everyone, maybe 10 more seconds to turn on their cameras.
Okay, while you're doing that, can I show you
Yeah.
my crest? So this is, can you guys see
Yeah.
that? So can you see that, Sabrina? So
Yes,
this
we can
is
see it.
Blue Herring Farm. This is the crest for my farm. So it says Blue Herring Farm, and that has the blue herring on there. So they found a wood maker who literally put that together for me. And I was sharing with Sabrina, even though it says 2022, the farm was founded in 2020, but my birthday is 2/22, and last year was 22. So it was been 02/22/22, and so that's why they put that on there. So that's our business crest. So I'm excited, in terms of just closing words, I consider you guys, whether you're domestic, internationally, wherever you are, I am honored to be here to serve you as we serve the land and as we share our knowledge with other people. For me, MESA and TAP has been pivotal in terms of helping to shape my journey. I had a lot of ideas of, being organic and honoring the earth and honoring First Nations people who came before us and being respectful of indigenous foods and indigenous ways of growing. But MESA and TAP, I am so grateful to you because you gave me the verbiage. And so it's something that I will always take with me. And so I would say to all of you, wherever you are, please know that we are connected in our service to the earth, in our service and our commitment to feed others, and our service and commitment to be humane to each other as well as to the land. So I am honored you know, to be here and to be a resource. And I truly, truly, truly hope we remain connected. I've already told Sabrina and I've told Catherine they will never get rid of me. So, so if you're ever in Georgia, I have plenty of land and I always have a barbecue available to throw something on out there, even if it's just a veggie burger. So please consider myself, your sister, in this movement. Please never think that I know more than you. This is a symbiotic relationship where we both learn from each other. So I am honored to be able to speak to you today. So I thank you.
Feeling all of that so deeply, Hillary. Thank you. Yeah, we'll go ahead and take this photo now. So if you don't have your camera on and you want to put an emoji that you're feeling, I see Katya has been sharing a heart. That, you know, whatever you're feeling, we can do that. And I will go ahead and take this photo right now.
Yay. Hi.
Let me know when to say cheese.
Yeah, you can say cheese. Great. I got it. Thanks so much, everyone. Hillary, with all of my heart, thank you. I have learned so much from you on your agroecology journey and also just as a land steward and a really exceptional human being. So thank you. It was an honor to have you here. Like Hillary mentioned, we will share this information, this video out, the recording, as well as any sort of supplemental references that Hillary has talked about today, different kind of her agricultural profile, whatever you're interested in sharing, Hillary, we can get that out to everyone here, as well as your contact information if people would like to connect with you individually.
Okay, and if you have further questions, please feel free to send them on to either myself or, you know, to Sabrina, post them in the classroom, something, you know, I'm here to share and support. One of the things in my journey has been people have been sharing for me, to me, and supportive of me. And that's the circle that I'd like to continue. So thank you, everyone. And hi, Latasha, she was in my cohort. Hi.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We will
Thank you, everyone.
resume our monthly webinars next month and hope to see you all there.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks.
great day. Peace.
Bye. Thank you,
Asante
everyone.
sana. Thank you.
Hillary.
Bye-bye. Latasha, call me sometime. Bye-bye.